No Nose Knows. Written by Irrespective. Chapter 5. Terms and Conditions Apply. Part 1.
Good morning, Mr. Bean.
Good morning, Your Highness, Bean replied with a smile.
Please, have a seat wherever you like. I'll have the pancakes out shortly. Luna may join us this morning, but I believe she will be better behaved than she was last night.
I'm sure she will be, Bean replied. Celestia gave him a broad smile and moved back into the kitchens. Bean was feeling pretty good about today. After his late-night discussion with Luna, he had slept pretty well. He wasn't sure if Celestia could alter the brightness of the sun, but it seemed to be exceptionally shiny and perky today. He had watched it rise that morning, before preparing for the day, and now he was eager to go back out into Canterlot and try his hoof at riding again. Perhaps he would only produce the hen scratches and nonsense, but inspiration was like catching butterflies, to use an allegory, and he felt the need to get out into the fields to have a chance at catching something wonderful. He was also resolved to try sending his descriptions of Canterlot out for review again as well. He would love to gain the interest of an editor, but at the very least, he could start getting an idea of what he needed to work on and where. Perhaps he could let Celestia look over more of his works. She was bound to be an expert in Inquisition, having probably been alive when half the words for it were invented, and being a teacher, she could at least give him a list of books to read that he could go over syntax and grammar. Hopefully she would be willing to, as he suddenly realized that she probably had graded so many papers on said subjects that she might actually hate the things. Just the book list then. That would be useful by itself.
Here we go.
Celestia reappeared with 3 plates of pancakes in her magic. She sat down next to Bean, set the plates on the table, and he was pleased to find that she had given him a funny-faced pancake, crafted with strawberry ears, blueberry eyes, a whipped cream mane, and a decoratively placed fruit pieces around the edge of the plate to enjoy. "This looks delicious, Princess. Thank you,"
You're welcome.
she cheerfully replied.
I hope the silly face is all right. I thought it might be a kind of corny.
"I like it," he replied. "It's cute."
Now the true test. You are a food critic here, so tell me what you think. Is my cooking worthy?
"I don't know that I should be judging you," he replied while feeling a knot of worry develop in his gut. He didn't want to offend her by criticizing her cooking. There was a vacancy on the moon, after all. "I bet you're a really good chef."
I haven't had as much practice as you think I've had,
she replied.
Please, I want to know. I have a tough hide, I can take it. Be honest with me. Are they any good?
Bean shook his head with a small laugh. She asked for it. He picked up his fork, cut a bite-sized chunk from the short stack, stifled a snicker at cutting the ear off the pancake head, and then went to work. Celestia watched him intently as he first took a deep sniff at the pancake. Out came the tongue, a brief lick, and out his eyes drifted upward again, while he thought of his evaluation. That's... he said after a moment. This time he went to actually eat what was on his fork. "This is quite interesting, Princess. Different for sure."
You're not just saying that, right?
No. I'm giving you my honest opinion. You've got all the expected ingredients, flour, milk, salt, eggs, but then you added extra sugar and vanilla. Be careful with that, because you'd make this way too sweet if you get the balance wrong. Also, make sure you take the fruit of the face into account. The flavoring here could easily overpower the berries and banana. Pure Vermont maple syrup. But I wouldn't really expect you to have the cheap imitation stuff. In all honesty, Princess, this is a really tasty treat. I'd maybe dial down the sweetness a few notches, though. It's okay the way it is, but the syrup and fruit and vanilla all add together to make it a bit overwhelming. It could be argued you're trying a bit too hard with this.
Now I know.
Celestia gave a pleased chuckle.
Thank you for your honest review. I'll maybe cut back on the sugar and vanilla.
Bean made a show of eating a big bite just to reinforce that the pancakes were indeed good. Celestia laughed at his theatrics before cutting and taking a bite of her own stack. It was just then Luna made her not-so-grand appearance. Bean sat back a bit in surprise. He had assumed that her dream walking was easy enough. There was no physical exertion to it. All she had to do was dream, too, right? It appeared not. Her hooves were dragging on the floor, her head and neck were lowered in exhaustion, her eyes were lined and bloodshot, her ears were drooping, and even her ethereal mane seemed to have lost some of its luster and strength. He'd run almost willing to guess that she had to run a marathon the night before.
Good morning, Luna,
Celestia cheerfully called.
Uh,
She grumbled back. Long night? Bean asked.
yes, and your little nightmare didn't help anything.
She groused.
It would have been better without that. You had a nightmare last night?
Celestia asked Bean with a note of worry.
It was quite vivid.
Luna answered for him.
You tried to incinerate him, sister. Something about finding out about his true motives. I would never,
She protested.
Mr. Bean, I have absolutely no wish for you to be injured in any way. Please understand that nightmares tell only lies, and that you should not heed anything they say.
Luna shot him a mischievously wicked smile, then dropped her muzzle onto her plate and began snarfing down her pancakes with noisy slurps, snorts, and snaps of her teeth at every piece of fruit, real or imaginary.
Oh, Luna, you really should have better manners for our guest. Yeah, I probably should.
Luna's words came out slightly mumbled and with little bits of food stuck to them.
Good pancakes, by the way.
Celestia gave her sister an annoyed look and muttered something under her breath. Bean forgot his own laden fork and simply watched the pancake carnage that Luna was creating as he contemplated the conversation he had shared with her last night. Had things really changed between them? Or did Luna still hate his deceptive hide and was merely being civil? Well, relatively civil for her sister? It certainly gave him the impetus to behave, if he wasn't going to already anyway. He was still thought Princess Luna would be a much better friend than an enemy, and he really didn't want to provoke her anymore. Besides, she could probably eat him whole with size of bites she was taking.
Do you plan on heading back today?
Celestia asked her mess of a sister.
I am not sure yet,
Luna replied through the vanishing crumbs. Once the last bit of the plate was gone, she stuck out her far too long for Bean's nerves tongue and licked the entire plate so clean that it could have gone back into the cabinets, then smacked her lips. Bits of pancakes and fruits were still stuck in the syrup on her nose, and Bean struggled not to laugh.
I have sent a missive, but have not received the reply. Once I do, I will know if I am still needed.
Celestia was clearly struggling to retain her own composure despite Luna's antics.
You have some breakfast on your nose. I'm sure I do.
Luna pushed away from the table and stood her eyes just barely open under the hooded lids, looking back to Bean like he was on his menu.
Maybe your fiancé would like to help me clean it off.
Baked Bean's official response to the offer was to choke on a blueberry eyeball.
Luna?
Celestia gave Luna a stern glare and a fierce frown.
Well, why not? Polygamy was still so vague when you wrote the clause, so we could simply say you're following the letter of the law. Luna? What? It is not like I'm proposing we divide him down the middle. If you do not wish to share, then fine.
Luna turned her sticky nose upwards as Bean started to turn purple again and gagged breathlessly on his food.
You can be selfish if you want. I shall say good day to you both for now, Mr. Bean. You should really take smaller bites.
And with that, Princess Luna strode away, her fruit-decorated nose held high in the air. Bean managed to clear his airway enough to cough up the obstruction, and Celestia patted him on the back as he tried to suck in as much air as possible.
I really don't know what she's got into her, she commented. She's hardly ever this hostile towards any pony.
Hostile? Bean replied through his gasp for air. I wouldn't go that far. I just don't think she likes the situation.
She's hardly one to make judgments on worthiness,
Celestia grumbled darkly.
But I suppose what you say could be true. Will you accept my apologies for her behavior on her behalf?
I'm fine. I don't hold it against her. I don't have any siblings, but I bet I would be protective of them too.
I appreciate your understanding. I guess we can only hope she will tone down the hostility as she gets to know you.
Or until we find that loophole.
Then she'll be very pleased indeed.
Celestia giggled a bit.
But I'm afraid my duties call. Do you decide what you will do today?
I'm thinking about going back into Canterlot. Maybe try to write some more.
You should try the Natural History Museum, just south of here. There are a number of fine exhibits that might spark your imagination.
I will, he nodded. Thank you. When should I return tonight?
Let's say around sunset. I should have at least some idea on how to get you out of this by then. When do you return? Ask any of the guards on duty to notify me, and then just follow their directions.
I will.
Enjoy your day.
Celestia called back as she left the hall. One simply cannot visit Canterlot without seeing the Equestrian Natural History Museum, located in the Quarter District in a veritable treasure trove of wonderment and enlightenment. Bean grunted and thought, what to write about next and how? Should he write about the exhibit on ancient fossils and recent Mesohippus finds? Or maybe the dioramas from the cave pony exhibits would be a better choice. He knew he would need to write something based on the information he gleaned from the founding of a kingdom section, no matter what. It was hard to decide. The writer's curse, he muttered around his pencil. Too many good ideas. He wasn't even sure he liked his opening paragraph. It seemed a bit flat with a grandiose statement, but not enough support. It probably need a few more adverbs, adjectives, to get the proper feel across. He wanted to stay longer, but a sudden hunger had seized him while he had been contemplating the one and only Ode to the Waning Moon, a painting so masterful that nobody could speak of it but in hushed and reverent tones. So he had curtailed his studies to sally forth and procure lunch with an abundance of grandiose terms to make what he was doing to sound more epic. He then planned on taking some time to try writing before going back to the Shoe and Nail to make sure they had held his room. There was a paranoid part of him that thought the front desk would not believe that the palace would be paying for a random tourist room, and that they would find a way to give it to the next pony in line. He still needed a place to stay after the loophole was found, after all. He'd paid in advance for that room, and he didn't want to lose the bits, in all honesty. Unsure of what to try for lunch, he simply settled down for walking up and down a street until something smelled good and tentative enough to try. He figured it wouldn't take long given how his gut was both mourning in respect for the long-digested pancakes and pining for another royal meal, and he could try writing a few paragraphs while he ate as well. Maybe this. Any pony with a taste for history would greatly enjoy the masterful displays that can be... No. I'm using masterful too much. I knew I should have brought the thesaurus. This would be easier if...
Watch it!
Bean registered the shout too late, and he collided into the side of another pony. The force of the impact somehow took him off his legs, and he quickly found himself sprawled across the cobblestone street.
Oh, Feathers, are you okay?
He groaned deeply in his pain as his ribs reminded him that they really would rather be introduced to some immovable objects from a distance and over time. Not all at once and with cracking results.
Here, let me help you up.
Bean felt the hope grab him and help him upright. He groaned again as he did so, but managed to stay up and block some of the pain.
You okay?
I think so, he replied as he rubbed his injuries and looked over himself. That was my fault. I wasn't watching where I was going. He then turned to face the pony he collided with, and found the most intense pair of green eyes he'd ever seen. I'm sorry, he finished slowly.
It's okay, so long as you're not hurt,
She replied.
That was quite the spill you took.
The female Pegasus was attached to those green eyes with a soft yellow coat and powder blue mane. A sunflower was tucked behind one ear to complete the look, and Bean couldn't help to think that she was pretty. I've had worse. Are you okay?
I'm fine,
She replied.
You broke my fall.
I really am sorry. I should have been watching what I was doing.
What were you doing?
Writing, he sheepishly admitted. Or at least, I was trying to think of what to write.
You're an author?
She asked as she turned and picked up his notebook. I'm hoping to be someday. I've still got a lot to learn.
Well, that should be easy enough for you.
She replied with a laugh and a snort. Why?
Your cutie mark.
She smiled a bit as she pointed it out.
Doesn't get much more obvious than an open book with blank pages, does it?
Oh? Oh! He twisted a look at himself. Yeah, I suppose not. Although it would be nice if something were actually written on those pages.
I'm Sego Lily.
She replied, a smile a bit deeper, and offered a hoof.
If you're going to crash into me, we should have at least have proper introductions.
Baked bean, he replied, and he shook the hooves. He quickly snuck a look at her flank. A trio of Sego Lily flowers made sense, and then he continued. Are you from around here?
Nah, just visiting. My Nana lives nearby. You visiting too?
Yeah, I'm trying to get some inspiration.
Well, I'll tell you what. Since you crashed into me, you can buy me lunch. Fair enough?
Bean smiled. I can live with that. Do you have any recommendations?
I really don't appreciate you being so mean to him.
Celestia stated in that familiar, mothering tone that Luna had not missed in the slightest.
The poor pony finds out he has to marry me, which is quite overwhelming in and of itself. And then while he's still trying to sort out, you start breathing fire down his neck. It's not like he's trying to court me to conquer Equestria, you know? Sally, I know. Just give me some time to come to terms with all of this. You know I have impossibly high standards for any potential suitors. Accidental or not, I don't like how this is turning out in the slightest. I know it's not ideal, but if all goes well, he'll soon be on his way. Please give him something positive to remember about this whole experience, will you? I will try. Thank you.
Celestia sighed, then smiled.
Have you heard from Blue Blood yet? His reply missive is what awoke me. He reports that negotiations with Prince Rithford are actually seem to be progressing faster now. Ha!
Celestia blurted out suddenly, and Luna gave her an icy stare as a hoof went to her mouth in alarm.
I fail to see the humor in that, sister. My deepest apologies, Lulu. I have no idea where that came from. Obviously, there's nothing to laugh about.
The icy stare continued unabated.
As I was saying, progress is being made and Bluebub believes that he can gain more ground by himself than with me. Your sudden disappearance yesterday didn't upset the Yaks, did it? It seems not. Bluebird reports that they assumed my work was done and that he had left and continued the negotiations. Good.
Celestia replied as they rounded a corner in the hallway.
How much longer will it take? I don't think it'll be anytime soon. The Yaks are temperamental enough that...
Celestia suddenly stumbled over her own front hooves as she careened sideways before hitting the wall and collapsing to her knees.
Sally!
Luna instantly was at her side.
Whew!
Celestia hooted.
Me and my fat flank. I'm gonna need to watch them more closely. Sister?
Luna asked while Celestia began stumbling down the hallway, again, and intently staring at her feet.
Are you feeling alright? Why, of course, dear sister.
She called back and her head drooped closer to the ground.
Except for those cracks. I knew it. They're the source of my woes.
She then tipped to her right, but her wings flared out and helped her maintain her balance. Celestia stopped, looked over her shoulder, and gasped in wide-eyed awe.
Lulu, I have wings,
she whispered.
When did this happen? Over 1,000 years ago. You'd think I would have noticed by now. Hey, I can fly then, right? I don't dare answer that.
Celestia gasped even more loudly and she planted her rear to put both hooves in front of her mouth.
Lulu, you... I have wings too.
Luna hazarded a guess.
And they're so pretty,
she bellowed in reply.
Please say mine look just as pretty. Please, please, please. Sally, what has gotten into you?
Luna shouted while Celestia grabbed one of Luna's wings and began poking through her feathers. There we go. The end of Chapter 5, Part 1. I hope you guys don't mind this more segmented take on my usual content. Normally, I'd make things 30 to 40 minutes, but cutting it down to 20 minutes really does help with editing and also producing itself, so I don't make any more of those longer hiatuses I have been doing. My apologies on that. It's a bunch of circumstances, but In the end, it was me deciding not to do stuff. But those who do stuff, because they're amazing and I love them, are my wonderful donators. Thank you, Chase Lemaster and HKH4, aka Texture. I really do appreciate your support. Anyways, this has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.